Today, we're going to talk about the Clemson Football 2024 schedule. And I want to know what games do you want to attend, whether it's home or away? What games really makes you kind of sit up straight and go, yes, I'll actually clear the schedule for this one. We're talking about it today on Clemson Football Live. We are just a few weeks away. I say a few weeks. It's more like, 5 weeks away from the spring game. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to go out there. We're just going to watch a team. It's always good to be in the Valley. But before we do that, I hope you subscribe. If you like what I'm doing, I hope you'll subscribe and drop me a note in here. Let me know what games you want to go to. But I am going to share the Clemson schedule via the Clemson website. And I want to say this. I'm extremely happy that we're playing Georgia. I'm not happy that we're playing them the very first game. I would like to have, I'd rather play Appalachian State, followed by Wake Forest, maybe get some Virginia in there, and then play Georgia, kind of get our feet wet, kind of get our legs under us for the season. But at the end of the day, it is a crying shame that Clemson and Georgia being so close to one another. They're within an hour and a half of one another. They're the two most competitive schools. Now, of course, pause there. You're like, hold on. Georgia and Georgia Tech's closer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about competitive football. I'm talking about over the past 6 or 7 years, teams that's actually made a splash in the world of college football. These two teams are the closest to one another. To the other, I mean, they're that close. They rarely play. This will be the first time that Clemson and Georgia plays one another since 2020. No, it's 2021. Forgive me. It was 2021. Clemson and Georgia played one another in the 2021 game. That was DJ's first year after Trevor had left. We know the final there, 10-3. DJ threw a pick six. But Georgia had a really, really tough time moving the football. In fact, they didn't move the football. But a win is a win. But it's good to see Clemson playing this game against Georgia. And it's going to be there in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's a great place to play. Now, some of the tickets that I've seen available so far. Now, I guarantee you that tickets will be released later on. I really don't know, who's releasing what and when. So if you're more up on that, leave some comments in the comment section. Let me know, when I should be looking for better tickets. But hey, the ticket prices already are outrageous. And of course, it's in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's Clemson, it's Georgia, so it's going to be pricey anyway. But I think I would have to sit in the toilet for $250 a ticket, and even if I got in, I would need 2 pairs of binoculars. But I'm glad that we're playing Georgia. That's definitely a game. I was asked yesterday by someone, said, hey, would you go to the Georgia game? Are you going to the Georgia game? And I said, I don't know. I gave a few reasons why. But this is definitely a game that if you're a Clemson fan and you're a football fan, if you're a college football fan, and let's just say you pull for another team, but it's not within driving distance, and you're in the Atlanta, Georgia area, I'll guarantee you, if you love college football, you might even go to this game just to see two teams that over the past 10 years has had a lot of success. See them play in person. So it's going to be a really cool game. Once again, this is not a preview. This is just talking about the games that really excite us. It excites me. And then just looking over the schedule. Now, on September the 7th, Appalachian State's coming to town. This is the first time since, I think, 2015 that they're coming to town. Scott Satterfield was the coach then. Appalachian State is notorious for ruining people's seasons. You just ask Michigan. I was, 16, 17 years ago. And then, of course, you have to think about in 2022, former Clemson quarterback Chase Bryce went down to College Station, beat Jimbo Fisher, the former coach at A&M, the very rich coach from A&M, formerly from A&M, beat him. And I would tell you this is a side note. I'll say to anyone, if you are willing to drive, and you live, see, I live in the upstate of South Carolina, so the Appalachian State campus is about 2 hours and 30 minutes, 2 hours, 45 minutes from my house. The campus is in Boone, North Carolina. It is beautiful up there, folks. I went to, my oldest is a Coastal Carolina fan, so we went up to Boone and seen a game at Kid Brewer's Stadium. It was in early October. The stadium is literally in the mountains, and it was wonderful. It was beautiful. Coastal won on a walk-off field goal. It was a very exciting game. But if you want to, and it's a small stadium, so there's not a bad seat in the house. If you want to see a beautiful place, a stadium, a setting, you need to check out Appalachian State. Now, of course, they're coming to Death Valley. And that's going to be an interesting game. That's a tougher game than what you realize. They always play up. They always put their best foot forward. And so that'll be a very interesting game. Now, on September the 14th, Clemson is off. They have an open date. They're going to be chilling out. Hopefully they're 2-0 at this point. But then they're going to play NC State. NC State's coming down from Raleigh. They beat Clemson this past year. By the way, go look at the Clemson NC State matchups from over the years. It seems like NC State, they always give Clemson problems, but do you realize that NC State, since 2004, 2005, this is right off the top of my head, give or take a game, they've only beat Clemson 3 or 4 times in that entire time. You know, I mean, Clemson, even though they may give Clemson headaches, Clemson wins against NC State a lot. Now, the asterisk with this, I mentioned Coastal Carolina just a second ago. Coastal Carolina's former quarterback, Grayson McCall, who, by the way, if you've never seen the guy play in person, you need to check him out. He's somebody that if Clemson could have brought in via the transfer portal, I would have done it like that. I mean, the guy is a baller. He's a man's man. He can play. He went to NC State, so Clemson's got to play against him as long as he's healthy. That will be a very good game. We're looking for some revenge on our dear old friend Dave Doran. Dave Doran, I can't put my finger on that guy. I can't. You know, there's one part that I'm like, hey, he's pro whoever he's coaching, but it's like he kind of goes out of his way to be obnoxious at times. And I don't know. But I do know that Clemson has revenge marked on this game. It's going to be in the Valley. They're coming off of an open date. That would be a great game to go to. I want to go to that game, especially my son and I were talking about this. We want to go to that game. And you know he's also a Gamecock. I know that's only one area in my life I failed with him. But he was telling me, he said, out of all the Clemson games that I want to go to, other than the rivalry game at the end of the year, he said, I want to see NC State play in Death Valley with Grayson McCall, because Grayson McCall can play. I hate that he went to NC State because I'm going to have to pull against him. I really like Grayson McCall. The guy can ball. But Clemson has their eyes on this game, and that's a game I definitely want to try to make it to. Now, the very next week, we welcome one of our new conference members, Stanford. Now, I was just in the Bay Area for work. Everybody was talking about the 49ers. You're like, well, duh, they're in the Super Bowl. Nobody talked about Stanford football. Nobody talked about Cal Berkeley football because they don't care about it. It's not because the San Francisco 49ers was in the Super Bowl. It's because nobody cares about it. So it's very interesting to add them to the schedule. You know, the last time that Clemson and Stanford played, it was against John Elway's dad back in the mid-'80s. Jack Elway. Clemson was up, 27-0 at the half or something like that. They almost blew it. They almost lost, but fortunately, they won the ball game. What game was that in? What bowl game? That was a bowl game. The 1986 Gator Bowl. Yeah. What a game. So that'll be interesting. It's not going to be a tough game. What the only problem that we have here with Stanford is that the week before them is NC State. The week after them is at Florida State. So you just kind of hope that Clemson will come into that game and dominate and get ready for the next week. Going to the comment section here. Got Donald Davison, to be the best, you have to beat the best. That's true. John Sarian, it will be heavy UGA fans there in Atlanta. Oh, yeah, it's going to be red. Clemson fans better not sell their tickets either. If they get them, they need to keep them. Donald Davidson, looking forward to the Vol Tech game. That would be I'll get to that game in just a second, but my dad has been there multiple times, and he says it's just a beautiful, beautiful area. Tiger 2 Deep says, I want to go to Pitt. That'd be an interesting game. Getting back to this. So we come out of the Stanford game. We're at Florida State. Now, our old buddy, DJ Uiagalelei, he's up there. He's at the game. He's going to be at the game. He's going to be playing quarterback for them. He played 1 year at Oregon State. And everybody knows how this is going down. Everybody knows that there's that uncomfortableness there. He feels like Clemson didn't give him the best options and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going into that. I've done videos on that. So there's that friction there. We know that Mike Norvell and Dabo have had some feelings towards each other, especially Sweeney towards him. Can't blame him. But this is going to be a big game. This is going to be a big game, especially whatever Clemson's record is up to this point. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, NC State and Stanford is a conference game. We have a 12-team playoff. So all you have to do is get inside the top 12, and you're in the playoff now. It's not like this junk that we've had the past few years. You know, we're glad we could have it. We didn't know why they didn't expand it to at least 8 teams, Power 5, and then 3 at large. But hey, I'm not going there. I'm not doing that. What I am saying is this game has a lot of playoff implications, especially if Clemson is showing vast improvements with the changes like with Matt Luke and seeing TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco come in, having Phil Maffa running point at running back. So this will be a very interesting game, even though it's at Tallahassee. I think it's 6 hours from my house, something like that, maybe 6.5. That would be a really interesting game to go to. Maybe make a couple of days of it. I don't know what the weather is like October 5th, but I'll guarantee you it's still kind of warm, so you could go to those beautiful beaches there on the Gulf Coast if you're willing to take the drive. But yeah, Florida State, definitely a game that if you wanted to make a road trip of it, that would be a game to go to. Now, the very next week you have Wake Forest, and it's at Wake Forest. Now, if you're in the upstate of South Carolina, again, like I am, in the Greenville area, Wake Forest is 2.5 hours from here, something like that. That's right off the top of my head. It's a small stadium. You can go there, get a decent seat. Clemson always travels well to this game. So they could go there. They're coming out of the Florida State game, hopefully victors over Florida State. But you go and you play Wake Forest at Wake Forest. It's that October 12th game. It might be a little warm, maybe rainy. I don't know. I don't think it'll be freezing at this point. Watch it have snow that day. But definitely a winnable game for the Tigers. If you wanted to take the family to a game and you're like, hey, we want to go away, but we don't want to make the trip to, say, like Florida State or Pittsburgh. And maybe we don't want to spend the money on a game like, I don't know, Georgia or Florida State. You know, the South Carolina game is going to be a home game, but it's always extremely expensive to get into that game. This would be a game to take them. It's in a, quaint North Carolina area. You could go up there. That would be a fun one. Then Virginia comes to town. This is very interesting because I remember the Virginia days back in the 90s when they had the Barber twins, Tiki and Rondé Barber. They had George Welch, him picking his nose on the sideline. For some of you young guns, you have no clue what it was like to sit and watch George Welsh pick his nose on the sideline. And Clemson at that point just had a hard time beating Virginia. They had a very difficult time to beat them. But the big thing about this is now you have a very lackluster Virginia team, and you have Tony Elliott coming home. So he's coming home. He's going to be coaching them. This is going to be his third year at Virginia. So this is going to be interesting to see Clemson and Virginia play in the Valley. And transparently, I haven't looked at Virginia's schedule, but it hasn't been good up there. And since Bronco Mendenhall kind of left, I don't know. It just kind of fell apart. But that will be an interesting game. So we have an open date on October the 26th. You go about 6 weeks, 6.5, 7 weeks maybe, in between your two open dates. You have Virginia coming, or Louisville, coming to town. Louisville's very interesting because this past year we know what they did. Brian Brom did a great job. The problem is, and I'm quoting someone else, and I thought this was brilliant, said they had enough fuel for 10 games, but not 13. And that's really what happened with Louisville. Louisville came out. They had the big win against Notre Dame. But good grief, when they played Florida State, a Florida State team who didn't, they were playing with a third string quarterback. Florida State threw for only, 53 yards in the entire game? And they still couldn't beat, or Louisville still couldn't beat Florida State. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do. I don't think you need to count out Brian Brom. He's got something going on up there. But see Louisville come to town. When I think of Louisville, I think about the game with Lamar Jackson. What year was that? Was that 2015? I think it was 2015 season. Deshaun Watson was a sophomore. And there was a lot of great games that year. Clemson had one of the toughest schedules in the country. When I think about Louisville, I think about that, but I really don't think about the mess that we've seen, or after that. And the last year they as I said, they did much better. But that would be an interesting game to see. At Virginia Tech, I told you my dad's traveled a lot. He's been to a lot of stadiums. He said Va-Tech is one of the pretty places to go to. And I think it's Blacksburg, Virginia is 3 hours from the upstate of South Carolina, something like that, roughly, a little over. Va-Tech would be a great game to go to. They seem to be somewhat turning the tide there. They're taking their time turning the ship, but it seems like they are. So one kind of wonder where they're at that time, in the season, or have they got anything going? That'll be very interesting. Next, at Pittsburgh. At Pittsburgh, I know someone else said that they have interest in going to that game, to each their own. I don't see myself going to Pittsburgh. Big John says here, he said that Pittsburgh is a fun trip and that Wake Forest is a fun trip. So, and he said, don't buy your away tickets from IPTAY. That said, I love going to Wake Forest. Just put it up here. Pittsburgh is a fun trip. The seat we had for Pittsburgh was a face value of on the 50 at field level. Home games, want to see Stanford. That would be interesting. Thanks, Big John. And Big John, thanks for supporting the channel. He supports the channel on a monthly basis. $3 per month, $5 per month, whichever one that you want to choose. Big John, I'm glad you're here. John Sarian, the Wolfpack could be the toughest ACC opponent this year. Transfer quarterbacks, some transfer wide receivers. They might be overall better than FSU. Sleeper team for Charlotte? You never know. You never know, my friend. Thanks for the comment. So Pittsburgh, I have a whole story with Pittsburgh. Had some interactions with the fans. I can't make everybody pay for the sins of others. That's unfair. But I had a very bad interaction with some Pittsburgh fans a while back. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Probably don't see myself going to that game. It's probably not a game that I want to go to. But Big John had a great time. And others would, love to go to that Pittsburgh area. Maybe get them a Pittsburgh-style steak. That's not a bad thing. Then we close out the season with two South Carolina teams. The Citadel. There off the coast of Charleston. Beautiful area, by the way. Charleston is expensive as crap, but I love it. And then next up, we play South Carolina. I would like to go back to the game because the last time I was at that game, it was in Death Valley when they beat Clemson by 1 point. And my son, who's a Gamecock, I took him to the game. And actually, Chase Henderson, my old buddy, one of the Henderson sisters, he had tickets there, but he had better tickets in the master section and said, "Hey, y'all want these tickets?" I was like, "But dude, you don't have to ask me twice." It was very kind of him. But so South Carolina's game is definitely a game I would like to go back to hopefully see some revenge in Death Valley. I know Clemson won this past year, and thank God for it. Ugly, beautiful, dominant, weak. However we win, I don't care. Just beat them. That's a game that I want to go to. Big John said VT can be a violent for Wave fans. Love it, but had 3 jump people pick a fight with me, and one tried to attack my wife. I've heard that about Georgia too from a few people. Yeah, my dad had some fans spill a bunch of beer on him, like from the upper, like he was down on the field level, and he was like, "Dude, it's just nuts." Anyway. I always look forward to the date with the Dirt Peckers, but other than that, I'm excited to see Stanford this year. I'll guarantee you can get Jacob Griggs. Thanks for supporting the channel, by the way. You're supporting the channel. Folks, if you want to support the channel, there's a join button below here. Now, if you're on an iPhone, you won't see it for some weird reason. You'll have to go to a laptop. Thanks, Jacob, for supporting the channel. Yeah, seeing Stanford, that would probably be an affordable ticket, too. John Sarian, drunk, fighting. Is there any place rougher than Columbia? I think it's also what time of day you go to. If you go to an early game, yeah, you'll see some fights. I went to that 12 o'clock game, Trevor's last year, or next to last year. I think it was his last year. Yeah, it was his senior season. When he threw a ball so long to T. Higgins that looked like he jumped, he threw so hard. Yeah. So funny about that is we were walking, me and my brother-in-law, we were walking into the game, and they were all, I mean, there was Gamecock fans fighting with Gamecock fans. Hammer drunk. And it was like 11 a.m. I don't know. Big John says, I'm not going back there. So, folks, we have the schedule. Georgia, App State, open date, NC State, Stanford, Florida State, Wake Forest, Virginia, open date. Then you have Louisville, Vitek, Pitt, the Citadel, South Carolina. Tell me what games you want to go to. Leave it in the comments section. Tell me why if you don't mind. That would be awesome. Also, I did a video yesterday called, Are You a Bad Clemson Fan? It's one of my negative videos, so if you're somebody who's like, Ron, you've just been doing some negative stuff recently, don't watch this video. Go watch the Cade Klubnik video. But if you're somebody who can, like, anyway, go check out either video that you want to check out. Drop me a comment that you did see the video. I do appreciate it. Just recapping, I would like to kind of go to the Georgia game, but the games I have my eyes on, I'd love to see NC State. I wouldn't mind going up to Wake Forest. Florida State, I probably won't make that drive. That would be a fun game, but I probably won't make the drive. Seeing them play South Carolina again would be fun. Maybe going to Blacksburg, but most likely won't happen. But those are the games, and I'm telling you, the away game to go to. You need to check out Appalachian State. Go Google their stadium and where it's located, especially in the fall. It is beautiful. it's breathtaking. So anyway, folks, I am so glad that you're here. I hope you subscribe. Feel free to reach out to me, drop me a line, let me know what's going on. And hey, we're getting closer to the spring game. I hope to see you there. As always, go Tigers.